Energy. Energy is essential to our prosperity. Whether we like it or not, Americans are dependent on foreign oil. Our homes, cars, schools, hospitals, farms, businesses, and just about everything else depend on oil. The critical nature of energy necessitates that Missouri develop and implement a comprehensive energy strategy. If elected governor, I will do that. We have made some important advancements in the last few years to develop alternative sources of energy. But as the price of traditional sources of fuel continue to rise, it reminds us that we have a lot of work to do. And I do not believe we can afford to sit back and rest on the knowledge that we have developed one or two sources of alternative fuel, such as ethanol and biodiesel. Our state currently provides a production incentive program for ethanol. I believe that we must work to identify other developed sources of alternative energy and provide them with support to encourage production as well. For sources of energy that are not as far along, I believe that our state should establish an energy research and development grant program that will work with private industry in our state to develop new sources of fuels or new ways of approaching traditional fuels, such as clean coal and nuclear power. I also believe that the purchase of products that use these fuels should be encouraged. The Missouri General Assembly, for example, has considered an individual income tax deduction for the purchase of a hybrid electrical gas vehicle. The most recent proposal calls for a deduction set at 10% of the vehicle's purchase price, or $2,000, whichever is less. This not only lessens the demand for gasoline, but also will create and maintain Missouri jobs as our state produces hybrid SUVs at the Ford plant in Claycoma near Kansas City. So we must also look at the proven, developed sources of energy located right here in Missouri. Our neighbors in Illinois have encouraged the purchase of Illinois coal by power plants, and I think that something like this should be on the table as well in Missouri. I support incentives, but let me be clear, more government is not the solution. Our economy will grow if entrepreneurs are able to access the resources that they need. As you all know, access to capital, whether you have a fledgling business or whether you are a large utility, is absolutely necessary in order to grow. The state of Missouri needs to play a more significant role in helping provide seed and venture capital to entrepreneurs and incubators to help support their growth. This can be accomplished through the use of tax credits for venture capital and directing investments of our public pension funds for alternative investments with a nexus here in Missouri. The big idea that you all have been working on, that state leaders have been working on with Chinese officials, is very, very exciting. This initiative has extraordinary opportunities for industry in Missouri, and I'm committed to helping make it happen. And we have all kinds of opportunities here in the St. Louis region and the entire state. You all have new startups in all types of areas, but of course the life and plant sciences focus has huge potential in this area. And if you travel down the I-44 corridor, down where I live in Rolla, we have science, chemical engineering, and defense research working in conjunction with Fort Wood and UMR, MUST, I think is its proper name now, and defense contractors here in the city. So let's talk a minute about plant and science, life science research, more specifically stem cell research. I say this knowing that many of you disagree with my opposition to embryonic stem cell research. But Amendment 2 is a product of I win, you lose politics. And now we have a quagmire where public investment in research is concerned. Even though most life science research doesn't involve embryonic stem cell research, Amendment 2 does not allow Missouri to support one and not the other. I believe in win-win politics. So one of the first things I would like to do as governor is to sit down with Missouri's pro-life community and the life science community to determine how this state can invest in a growing area of the economy which has a lot of promise, without fear that any public money is spent on research that involves what I and many others believe is the creation and destruction of life. These two communities should be able to reach an agreement where this state can lead in the life sciences without compromising our values. Finally, let me share a few thoughts I have on the upcoming August 5th primary. You know, I can't think of a Republican gubernatorial primary in recent times in our state where there are so many clear contrasts and choices for voters. My opponent is well skilled in the politics of Washington, D.C. Some of you may have heard him say that he and his Washington friends have lost their way. Based on what Missouri voters are saying across the state, I'd say that's an understatement of the century. The answer to every question in Washington these days seems to be spend more money, whether it's on the bridge to nowhere or Missouri tax dollars being spent on the Maine Lobster Institute. My opponent was there to help bloat the bureaucracy and pass on an enormous budget deficit on to our grandchildren and our children. My Missouri experience has taught me differently. Throwing money is rarely, if ever, the best solution to a problem. I believe in action, not talk. I believe in solving problems, not breaking the system, because each side has their own agenda and wants to prove that they are right. I believe that we should approach problems not as either or, but with an attitude that looks at all the limitless possibilities. I believe that those three words, we the people, are what makes our government work. And that is your governor. I serve you. Thank you again for inviting me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd love to hear from you and hope I have a chance to talk to each and every one of you before you leave. Thank you. Questions?
During the next gubernatorial term, where the state is facing a huge decline off the cliff of transportation funding, what would be your resolution to that?
That's a very good question. Did everybody hear? She wanted to talk about transportation issues that the state's facing. And, you know, I say there's good news and bad news. The good news is that Missouri highways have improved dramatically since Amendment 3 passed. So that's the good news. The bad news is that we are facing a funding crisis because the federal funds are declining. Our bond capacity is used up. And we need to figure out different ways, innovative ways of funding transportation. And, you know, I think we need to keep the options wide open. I think we need to look at public-private partnerships. I know there was a proposal in the General Assembly to look at earmarking part of general revenue to pay for transportation and infrastructure. I think all of those should be, you know, as governor, I'm willing to look at all of those and get the right people in the room to talk about that and make sure that the public is willing to go along with whatever it is that we come up with. But luckily, you know, places like Indiana and some other states have have taken some of those innovative steps with public-private partnerships. So we can hopefully learn from what they've done and see how well it works.